when you're aware of who you're being as much as what you're doing, and when you're really in alignment with what your true purpose is, you're more likely to be in a creative flow, and you're more likely to be creating from a place of joy. And the more likely that you're just enjoying that journey in the present moment, the more likely it is that you're going to create something that people really love, because it's coming from a place of love, right? So that's kind of the glue and the awareness. The other big trend is going to be quantum computing and how that interfaces with AI. So much of this is just going to speed up, and it's interesting, not everybody's going to win, but I think that the companies that are going to win with it are the companies that find ways to use it to solve, like any business at any time in history, to solve real problems for real people, right? Not just, a feature looking for a problem.
Welcome to the Dope Living Podcast, the show that breaks every rule about success. I'm your host, Janay, and we're here for anyone who refuses to choose between wealth and wellness, career and personal fulfillment. Whether you're building businesses, climbing the corporate ladder, or just designing a life that's more intentional, this is where dreamers become doers by creating success that feels as good as it looks. Ready to live dopely? Let's go. Hello, dreamers and doers, and welcome to this episode of the Dope Living Podcast, where we celebrate dreamers and doers. So I'm your host, Janay, and today I am about to introduce you to someone who's going to completely shatter everything you know about building businesses, using AI, and designing a life that works. But first, let me tell you about a moment that literally broke the internet not too long ago. So last month, a Chinese AI company, you might have heard of it, DeepSeek, used $6 million to build what Silicon Valley has been trying to build with billions for about years. Stock markets crashed, tech giants panicked, and everyone started asking, how is this even possible? My guest today has been predicting this exact scenario for years. Meet Melinda Wittstock. And when I tell you her story, you're going to understand why she saw disruption coming from a mile away. So picture this. At 24 years old, she's interviewing Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, guys, for the Times of London. He stops mid-interview and tells her that she asks the best questions. Guys, that's who we're talking to today. Of anyone who's ever interviewed him. That's crazy, Melinda. But that's just
I'm brave.
Super brave. But what's crazy is that's just the beginning. So she goes on to build not one, not two, but 5 companies, including BBC TV show that reached 20 million viewers, a crowdsourcing app that hit 3 million users in 8 months, and a political news agency serving 300 plus TV and radio stations with a daily audience of 3 million people. That's wild. But here's where it gets even more wild. In 2024, Melinda was named AI Pioneer of the Year by California Investment Forum. She's currently building Podopolo, an AI-powered podcast platform that's revolutionizing how we discover and monetize content. And she's a venture partner at Zero Limits Capital, investing in the next generation of innovative entrepreneurs. That is a tall order, Melinda.
Oh, I guess I've been busy, but I don't know. It's all flown by.
But I can't forget. I like this now. I'm getting into the core of dope living. You've done this all while raising 2 kids, maintaining a spiritual practice of meditation and yoga, traveling to places like Richard Branson's Necker Island, and wait for it, You did a 20-minute stand-up comedy set at Caroline's on Broadway.
The most terrifying thing I've ever done.
It's like my dream. I actually think I'm a comedian. And one day, like, you're inspiring me now to maybe try it.
Gosh, well, it was so much fun. I was actually happened because I was part of an entrepreneur group, and there was a comedian that came and just taught us all how to do stand-up. And it was really part of helping us get better at, public speaking and confidence and all these sorts of things. But once you learned how to do it, I mean, this guy, Matt Kazam, he put us through our paces, helped us understand timing and structure. And then we had these 20-minute routines. And we ended up, taking over Caroline's on Broadway. And I thought I was just performing for other entrepreneurs, but it was open to everybody. Like, it was a packed crowd of just like regular New Yorkers, right? And so
that's so awesome.
But it was a lot of fun. It was kind of scary. Like, a couple seconds before I went on, I forgot everything, and then it came back, and I was good. But it was a lot of fun, and it really does. Doing things that get you out of your comfort zone really do genuinely grow your confidence, So that's key to entrepreneurship, I think. If you can go and do stand-up comedy, you can be an entrepreneur, and probably vice versa.
That, and it's interesting. So one of the projects that I've just launched called Bevy Experiences, it's a experience kind of group company for, and of course, I'm so animated, so I'm going to be like hitting everything. But it's anyway, an experiences company for corporate groups. And I think one of the most compelling experiences that I can think of is like Improv 101 for teams. And, putting themselves out there in such a vulnerable manner, but learning something new, I think is one of the core memories that you have when you're building a team or trying to, build more of a integrated team. I think it's so important. And Improv 101 is probably the best way to do that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, 100%.
So here's what makes this conversation so special to me. So you've mastered something that most entrepreneurs never figure out. And that's turning every limitation, every resource, every shortage, every disadvantage into a competitive weapon. So you've been living proof that you don't need unlimited resources to build unlimited success. You just need to think a little bit differently, which some would argue is the pure definition of innovation. So,
gosh, yeah. I mean, you can always use more resources, but having that constraint around it does mean that if you're going to succeed, you have to think differently, right? Like, you have to find a way over things, under things, around things, but you also need a real resilience and determination to push through those times where you don't really have the resources you need. And female founders, I want to just get on a soapbox about this. Female founders raise less than 2% of the available venture capital money. And that statistic is actually going down, even though we tend to return 60 cents more on every dollar invested. So it's like a whole bunch of VC dudes are kind of sitting around rejecting female-founded companies, women that really need the money, or the ones that do get funded get check sizes that are much smaller than their male competitors. And yet we do well with that. But we could be doing more if we had the resources that, because you are competing on an unlevel playing field. And so, my worry is that that circumstance might put people off or make people give up earlier than they should. Like, it takes a special kind of crazy, and I'll just say that, like crazy in a good way, to persevere through those sorts of, which I perceive are really structural challenges that hold back a lot of women entrepreneurs with game-changing, big world-changing ideas.
Yeah. One of the things that happened to me, so I went through a really dark period, and with COVID happening and being kind of recluse, I think it's so easy to get into a box where you're kind of getting pushed down, but you're also not even around the right people, right? Because I'm sure when you get into those spaces, you see the same person over and over again, and you start to think maybe I'm crazy and maybe there isn't like a group for me. And yeah, that could really put people in a dark place. And I think at the end of the day, when you start to find your tribe, when there's people like you existing in the world and you can actually, meet and speak with people like you kind of get out of that and see light at the end of the tunnel. I hope. I mean, there's still a lot of.
It's vital. I think entrepreneurship is very isolating unless you really make it a priority to invest the time to have great mentors and be willing to switch up your mentors too, because as you grow, you need different things. You're depending on like what you're learning, so you can outgrow mentors. You need a community of friends that genuinely have your back and like your business family, as opposed to sometimes your regular family, who regular families, partners, friends can sometimes be threatened if they're not entrepreneurs themselves, because an entrepreneur is growing and changing and frankly kind of obsessed. So we're a little bit different than most people. And a lot of the people around us, I think they mostly come from a place that's well-meaning, like they believe they're protecting us from ourselves. And so they'll say things like, oh, it's okay. Don't worry about that not working out. Or like, are you sure you should try for that? That seems a little crazy. Or those kinds of comments, right? They think they're helping us, but they're actually projecting their own fears onto us. And that's one of the reasons it's really lonely. So you need to be around other entrepreneurs. You need to be around people who've already done what you've done. I find that the people who are the most successful are often the most generous with their time and their advice. And so just being brave enough to ask for the help that you need and such. But we do need that community. And yet, like, I find this, it's a trap for myself as well. It's so easy for me to self-isolate because I'm like, I'm an introvert.
I know.
And I get like super focused on like what I'm doing. And I look up and it's like, wait, where is everybody? So like I have to really actually like force myself to go out and like meet new people and all of that. But it's game changing. And it's so important because business at the end of the day is about relationships. We're all humans doing business with each other. It's about the relationship.
Exactly. So for the audience, whether you're building on a small island like me, a small town, or a small budget, today I want to speak with you, Melinda, about how to change what we think about our limitations, right? And because the spoiler alert here is that, they might be your biggest advantage. So let's jump right into it. So Melinda, I have to start with the DeepSeek internet crasher. So the markets went crazy, tech giants panicked, and suddenly everyone's asking, how is this possible? Is this exactly what you expected to happen? Is it really?
Well, here's what's inevitable. And you never know where it's going to come from. So what I always expect is disruption. And I always expect disruption from a place that no one's thought of. It's always usually somebody who has a different experience, someone in a different context, country, someone that sees something that other people don't. And why they see that, sometimes it's just because of a unique experience or mix of experiences. Sometimes it's a different context. Sometimes it's a constraint, like lack of money. In the case of China and DeepSeek, it wasn't lack of money. The Chinese government puts tons of money into startups there, arguably much more than in the United States, with less pressure to have a return. If the companies fail, they fail. But like a lot of them are government funded. So there's a lot of funding of innovation, probably for DeepSeek, there are probably lots of other AI companies trying the same thing that failed. All right. And so it wasn't lack of money, but the forcing function in the case of DeepSeek was lack of access to GPUs, like to NVIDIA chips and to these sorts of things. And that forced a different approach. So do you have to
Mm,
have the entire world's data and violate all their privacy, like scrape from the deepest corners of the internet and have everything and all books and all things to
mm,
be able to create a large language model? It turns out you don't. And one of the things that I did see coming, which is very much aligned with DeepSeek, is the fact that AI is going to be, I think, most powerful when it's purpose built.
mm,
So it's not necessarily drawing from content from the entire internet. It's utilizing the actual expertise of real people
mm,
and sort of productizing that with AI. It's using things like first party data or very proprietary data, but it's built for a specific purpose to solve a specific problem for a specific group of people. And right
mm.
now, the AI innovation is for all these large language models, right? They're training all these models, but it's sort of like looking for a problem to solve.
Okay.
So you know what
Mm,
I mean? And so like
yeah.
everybody, is playing around with Chat GPT or playing around with agentic AI or all these different things that you can do. But I think the entrepreneurs that really will succeed with these tools are the people that use AI to make their business better, or to get, whether it's in a marketing case, just to be better at targeting or like better at crafting a message or better at using it as a companion to human creativity. Because after all, the thing that everybody has to remember about AI is being trained on the past. AI does not know the future. Maybe someday AIs will become like sentient human beings and be able to think in a quantum way and have new ideas. But right now that's not happening. It's all historic data. Okay. So there's a limitation. So it will, and it's basically pattern recognition. Okay, so sometimes AI will find patterns, right? And it's basically essentially predicting based on this vast volume of data. It's basically predicting what you likely want. And through reinforcement learning, through all these things, right? It's we think that it's smarter than it is. Now, this is AI in the context of your Chat GPT and such, right?
Right.
There's a whole other types of AI though that are diagnosing, can do personalized medicine at scale or like solve cancer or things like that. So there's a lot of tremendous kind of innovation in the space. But for the average person and the average person using Chat GPT or whatever, or one of the things that I worry about is the lack of transparency on these models and whether they're being trained ethically, whether they're being trained in a way that's aligned to the best interests of human beings, whether they're diverse, like, or biased. Because if they're being trained on, say, historic data, it's very easy to introduce bias into, say, lending decisions, like who's going to qualify, what interest rate are you going to get, stuff like that. So sorry, I went on a long thing, but all I'm saying is that there's plenty of room for innovation in this space. But I think people have to take a beat, though, as well. It can solve a lot of things, but not everything. You know what I mean? But DeepSeek, and I think there will be others like it. Particularly, I think the next thing to really watch out for are two things. Where you see a break off with people, and this would describe Podopolo as well, taking a much more decentralized approach to AI, a much more collaborative approach, a very purpose-built one to serving the needs of podcasters, advertisers, and how, just regular consumers around content. And I can get into that more, but doing that in a very decentralized way by leveraging technologies like blockchain and decentralized protocols and such that give people a lot more power and agency over the AI that they're using, right? And control and ability to own their own content. If their content gets scraped by an AI, to know that, like, have proof that it was actually their content. So that content is attributed to them, that they can potentially earn money from that content, even if it's essentially stolen and repurposed by an AI. So these are big problems. The other big trend is going to be quantum computing and how that interfaces with AI. So much of this is just going to speed up, and it's interesting. Not everybody's going to win, but I think that the companies that are going to win with it are the companies that find ways to use it to solve, like any business at any time in history, to solve real problems for real people, right? Not just, a feature looking for a problem.
Yeah, what's interesting now, what I've been hearing a lot, kind of on the marketing, digital marketing space, is that we've got to get our content. We've got to get AI capturing our content, right? And so now you've got people that are eager to show up from a awareness perspective, using ChatGPT and the like. But you raise a very critical point. It's like, well, what control do you have on that? And I'm interested to hear.
None.
Right? Is there any control right now?
Well, okay, so here's an interesting example. I'll try and make this really simple because it gets complex really fast, right? Okay, so Podopolo, my podcast platform, we have a library of all known podcasts from the beginning of time. So automatically ingested into our platform, dating back to 2008, instantly updating, something like 5 billion podcast episodes in audio and video. So it's a great model to train on, right? And we're understanding what's going on topically on all those podcasts, correlating that with what we know about listeners. There's all kinds of different benefits from that, like much better recommendation engines, much better search, the ability to get better at monetizing content through highly contextual advertising. So the ad is relevant to the listener or viewer, and the advertiser gets a better conversion rate, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like all of those things. But from that library, we're also able to create a pretty powerful content repurposing engine. And I believe that podcasts, and you will learn this too, podcasts are one of the best content engines in the world, because from a podcast, you can take that content and slice and dice it in multiplicity of ways to different platforms, create native versions of things, all sorts of stuff. So on Podopolo, podcasters, from their transcripts, we can create interactive workbooks or emails, and the voice of the guest or the voice of the host or the social posts or automate clips or like a million things. Okay, but here's the thing. I'm finally getting to the point here. Sorry. One of the things we've discovered that we can do, and this is functionality that, like, say, a Notebook LLM has, or Notebook LM, we can take a whole genre of podcasts, or say all the top podcasts today that we're talking about the government shutdown, or podcasts are talking about the stock market, or the latest true crime hit or whatever. We can take, actually right now, a digest of all of those podcasts, create a whole new derivative work, and go monetize that. And it's not just us. Increasingly, a lot of people can do that. So what does that mean for you, the content creator, right? Your content gets used in this new work that you have no control of. You're not necessarily credited unless, the company is, I think, ethical in doing that, right? For like attribution or links back to you, let alone monetization. Now, already we've seen things like, say, Scott Galloway on the Pivot podcast he does with Kara Swisher. Someone took his likeness, trained it on all his content, and his videos and such, and started creating fake content in his name and posting it all over Instagram and like Twitter and or X, and all these different platforms, none of whom would take that content down.
Mm.
He had no recourse whatsoever. So apart from the fact that it was impersonating him in a way that he didn't like, this person was also able to monetize that content, and all those social platforms were able to monetize it. And who was the loser in that case? Scott
He
Galloway.
was, yeah.
Okay. So because we see this coming, this is one of the reasons why we're using blockchain to do what's called the tokenization of all of that content, meaning
Right.
that if we can track every single who owns what bit and do the effective blockchain version of being able to guarantee the provenance and the ownership of that content. If it does get mashed up into some new episode or it does get impersonated, the content creator has proof of ownership so they can
Right.
defend their copyright.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But not only that, I mean, where we're really going with this, and I think sometime in 2026 we'll be there with this functionality, is the ability to track the provenance, track the attribution, and ultimately set up a very decentralized royalty payment system. So the content creator would get paid for those derivative works, right? But this is future stuff. And I think a lot of people aren't really aware of this yet because it's like, oh, wow, look at me. I have all this stuff and I can create my avatar and my digital twin. And that's something that Podopolo also intends to offer. But we want to offer it in a way that's safe, in a way that puts the empowerment and frankly, the enrichment of the content creator first, not the big platforms. So we have a very different approach. And I think, we started the conversation talking about DeepSeek and whatnot. And again, a contrary approach. So in business, it's really, we're also talking about being isolated and alone. So we zig while others zag. And the people who are brave enough to do that usually win in the end, but sometimes it's much harder along that path, right?
Right.
Much harder. Because there's so much more that you have to prove, and there's so much more like markets you need to educate, investors even that you need to educate.
And you're
right?
saying next year, right? I mean, that's in 3 months,
Yeah, it's pretty
technically,
close.
Right?
Well, yeah, I don't know if it'll be in the first quarter of next year, but I mean, like we're getting there because it takes quite a. Well, actually, we're pretty close. I mean, I every time I always think I can do things faster than I can. I'll just be candid.
We all
I think,
do
oh
it.
yeah, we'll be launching that, right? And it always takes longer, and there's always some unexpected thing or whatever. But sometimes in the third quarter, I think of next year, I mean, this will be really robust. But we'll be doing a lot of rollouts and beta tests with, select groups of podcasters and just regular people and advertisers along the way, and launching it only when it's really, really good.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit, and this is something I've not heard, and you said it, that women entrepreneurs return 60% more on every invested dollar, specifically because we're forced to be more resourceful.
We have no choice.
Right. So so we're on the Dope Living podcast, and a part of, talking about this and kind of talking about the future is kind of stepping back and thinking about the mindset that we have to be in when we are faced with some of these not so nice facts, right? Especially what you're talking about, even the third quarter of next year seems like we've got a lot of work to do. So what do you think is going to make, how are you psychologically, but how do you think you're going to?
It's a good question.
Crazy. What mindset do you have to be in right at this very moment to make that happen, or right. think that we can make that happen, or
That's a great question. So here's what I try and balance. Okay, so as an entrepreneur, you have your North Star, you have your vision, like where I can see it and I can see what I'm like. I can see it. I can see happy customers. I can see the impact. I can see it, and I meditate on that. I visualize that. I feel it, live it, breathe it, right? That ultimate end goal. But at the same time as I'm holding that over here, I've got this, oh, what am I going to do today? Or like, I know that I'm going to encounter all kinds of different problems or challenges or things or opposition even, or new competition, or I don't know, friction, right? Um, at different steps of the way that may delay the progress, or like not have enough resources, or, these sorts of frustrations. And when I was a little kid, I grew up doing a lot of sailing. My dad was like a competitive sailor, right? A sailboat. And I learned very, very young that it was impossible to sail in a straight line. So you knew where you were going, but you had to zigzag to get there because the wind was changing. The temperature was changing. The water currents were changing. The size of the waves were changing, like a whole bunch of different things that you could not control. So dialing back to entrepreneurship, you've got your North Star, where you're headed, right? And your vision, and you're like maniacal in your focus. And yet on the other hand, you're coachable, flexible, nimble. You don't, if things don't quite work out, you find another way. I hold both of those, and I've gotten good at holding those two things in tandem, right? It's kind of being up in the clouds and down on earth at the same time. And and but you can't be. So in that case, I'm taking off, coming back down, whatever. I have to really at times, well, honestly, I think it just comes down to conscious awareness. I mean, being in the present moment. I mean, just being aware, even like of your feelings. Sometimes even down to, and this is why, I'm a conscious entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is, not only that I want to do good social impact with my business. I do this because I want to like genuinely make the world better, for everyone. Like not just, our customers, our team, just the end results, everything, right? But conscious because when you're aware of who you're being as much as what you're doing, and when you're really in alignment with what your true purpose is, you're more likely to be in a creative flow, and you're more likely to be creating from a place of joy. And the more likely that you're just enjoying that journey in the present moment, the more likely it is that you're going to create something that people really love because it's coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of the glue, and the awareness is about just being aware. Okay, so this is a moment where I'm up in the clouds and I'm dreaming, and all of that. Okay, and I'm aware that I'm that, but then I'm aware that, okay, now I'm down in the block and tackle of the tactical, like, oh my God, I got to meet payroll.
Right.
Yikes,
Right?
cash flow is tight, right? And so, it's juggling and balancing all of that. Now, it's not easy. I've done this for so many years now that you almost develop a muscle memory. It's kind of like, oh yeah, like I remember how I got through it last time. I can get through it again, right? And you just start getting that confidence or the resilience, and there are always new problems. And then it's also just coming to there's a certain point where I came to the conclusion that all failure was actually good, because all it means is that you're trying, and all it means beyond that is you're getting feedback that can make you better. That's all it is. There shouldn't be any stigma about it. There shouldn't be any like something taking longer than you think, or trying like a feature on an app and it doesn't work, or you launch a product and there are no sales to begin with, or something like that. That does not mean that you've failed. It just means that you have more work to do. You just have more tweaking to do, and keep going, right?
What's interesting that you mentioned, and I heard it before several years ago, when I was working with a sailing team, but sailing is one of the few sports where you actually learn critical thinking. Like,
Yes, yeah, actually, yeah.
okay, and you
Yeah.
described it so beautifully. And they were like, if you want your kids to really learn how to figure things out, sailing would be one of
Mm-hmm.
the best sports to put them in, because I
Yeah.
mean, it's like almost
It's
life
also
and death,
teamwork.
right? It's
Yeah,
teamwork.
it is. It's
It,
almost, it's teamwork. It's everything.
right.
Yeah. And also it's just beautiful. It's fun. It's flowy.
Exactly. So it's interesting that that is your background, and it's been in the back of my mind for so long. Like, do I put my daughter in sailing? Because I really want her to learn, how to fix problems as they're occurring and not really sit in the problem. And because at that point, when you're on the seas, you've got to figure it out in real time. And so it's really
Yeah.
interesting that you've had that experience, and that experience that really connected with me. But at the same
It's
time,
interesting too. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry. I
go
didn't mean
ahead.
to interrupt. Go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying the other thing is not, it's critical thinking and then some, because that teamwork plus all the different dynamics, it almost encourages sort of more matrixy thinking. Like it's non-linear. It's not kind of like A to B. It's like all learning how to understand all the different things happening all at once and how those different, I don't know, stimuli or different events or different things, both external and internal, are all interacting with one another, and then what you should do with those particular combination of circumstances, right? So, like sailing does that. Like I was just actually, it's really interesting. You helped me really articulate something that I've known intuitively for a really long time about that piece of it. So, yes, put your daughter into sailing. It's a good
Yes,
idea.
I done and done. When she gets of age, I'm definitely going to do that. And funny enough,
Yeah.
I just read about a study where over 70% of entrepreneurs describe their path as nonlinear.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you also describe it as such, because that, as you kind of talk with people, and they're not going through the path that they expected, and they think something's wrong, when in fact most successful entrepreneurs would describe their path as nonlinear. As I would say, they were crying in a parking lot at some point in their life, and then having to
Oh,
wipe off
God.
those
Yeah.
tears and get out the car and put on a brave face, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so I think that the way you've described all of it is exactly what we need to hear and be reminded of, that, you know, um, I'm sure the next year is going to be really tough for you. It's going to be super rewarding though, and it's
Okay.
going to be,
I
it's
hope
going to
not.
mean
I mean, I hope
something.
enjoyable.
Yes.
Enjoyable. So here's the thing. This is the other big lesson. Okay, another soapbox from me is enjoy the journey. It's not about the destination. So, like, if you like what you actually do and you like the people you do it with, that's what matters. Like that's what matters. So, like, you're doing it with people, team member. You're an entrepreneur, so you get to create your own circumstance, right? You get to choose who you work with. You get to choose the pace. No one's telling you what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
There, I mean, because I think we put all kinds of external things like this has to be done at by 3. Who says? Like, why?
Right. 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 Yep. Yep.
So understanding, like, what are the kind of shoulds, like, that are not actually shoulds, they're just some sort of external subconscious driver, makes you think you have to be a certain way or do something or achieve something by some date or whatever. Those are all artificial. Like
Right.
they're all construct, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'll have fun because I love what I do. Like, even the hard things. Like every now and again, you can get pissed off. Like if someone does a frivolous lawsuit against you or something like that, yeah, that's irritating. But it's like, oh yeah, okay, another one of these. I've got people who'll deal with it, right? It's right. And in a case like that or something else where someone's just treated you badly, I have compassion for those people now because I think, oh God, their life must really suck that they feel they have to be like that. Like, wow, like I'm really, I have compassion. I just move on. Like I just don't let it. I take inspiration from my golden retriever, who literally, if another dog doesn't like him, he just shakes it off.
Just moves on.
It's just literally is like, and that's that. And there's a smile on his face again. So
Mm, I
it's
love
just
that.
being these are all, I mean, because entrepreneurship really is, this is like a metaphor for life. And I think entrepreneurs are living more vividly in life because we're pushing up against boundaries all the time. Like,
Mm.
you mentioned Steve Jobs, who I had the, great fortune to interview and actually learn quite a lot from. It was just before he'd returned to Apple Computer. He was doing like Next or whatever. And I was asking him questions about how he got fired. And like, yeah, I was being really pushy. but, um, but, but really interesting, but asking him a lot of in-depth questions about the nature of innovation and such. And I think that's when I first really kind of understood that you really grow as a person when you're outside your comfort zone. And if you want therapy, become an entrepreneur
Mm.
because it's going to confront you at unexpected times with things that are buried deep in your subconscious, like things that are driving you that you don't even know are driving you, right? Like,
Mm.
and that's gonna manifest in your daily experience. And so if there's something that's going on there, particularly repeating patterns, it's the kind of thing that you can focus on and heal. So that's why there's a yeah, like entrepreneurship is kind of weirdly therapeutic. Like, yeah, like at knife point sometimes, but but and it
I love
is,
that reference.
but but like it's hard, but hard is good because it like makes you better. So again, it's just
Yeah.
we all choose our thoughts around it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And forgive me, because it's hard when you are sometimes like you feel like you're just getting knocked down. It's like the waves are just hitting and you're trying to
no, yeah,
walk
I know,
against the
I know.
wave.
I
And
was
it's
like,
interesting
why?
about the timeline, right? Because if you let like social media tell it, and there's actually a a post that keeps showing up on my feed that says that um poverty loves taking its time, and wealth is like, and I'm looking at it, as a someone that's trying to start a movement around dope living, which is about choosing your life, choosing your timeline, choosing your path, and doing that first. So I call it like lifestyle first, like, and not, or I can call it ass backwards. One of the two is, it like, can it work? And I'm on this journey to figure out, can it work? Because I don't know. Because when you're in it, you are thinking that this is all that exists, and I can't.
Right.
I feel like it can't be. It can't be that success is solely about giving up your entire freedom and selling your soul. I just can't
No,
subscribe to
I
that.
don't think I don't think it is. Okay, here's a great okay, so think of these wildly successful entrepreneurs like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, okay?
Hmm.
Respectively, the first and third richest men in the world. Do they look happy to you
They look
at all?
they look a little crazy. They look like they might be going a little crazy.
I mean, Elon Musk in particular is a really interesting one because and a lot of other people like him who seem so aggrieved.
Mm,
Where has the world gone wrong for him
mm.
with
Yeah.
$500 billion? Like
Wow.
anything that he ever wanted, okay? And yet no one can convince me that he's a happy person,
Mm.
right? I mean, at all. And aggrieved and complaining all the time.
Yeah.
Always someone else's fault, someone else's. What is that? So like I would just say that's not dope living, even though, I mean, that guy, he needs, quite a bit of stimulant, I guess. But I find that really fascinating that you could have someone like that, or you could go, or like I did, go into this big trip into the Amazon rainforest and meet these people who'd only met the outside world, like native people who'd only met the outside world 20 years earlier. and have nothing and be like some of the
So
happiest people
happy.
that
Exactly.
I've ever seen. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
like being rich or hitting that milestone or having the perfect, I don't know, apartment or the perfect thing, all those things are lovely. And money is great because money's a tool and money buys freedom, right?
Right.
It gives you it's a tool. It gives you the ability to do things. But if you're just sitting there like accumulating it just for accumulation's sake, I think that's kind of empty.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people like past a certain point where their money and their power doesn't make them any happier. In fact, they seem aggrieved all the time.
Right.
And
Right.
and so so I mean, there are lots of reasons for becoming an entrepreneur. I think there are ways to make consistently a lot more money than being an entrepreneur for most people, like corporate law
I
or
say it all the
being
time
a
because
being a banker
in the
or like
Bahamas, I mean,
running.
the best jobs to have are lawyers, bankers,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, that's
They
it.
make
Hmm.
more money. I mean, because it's consistent and whatnot. We're entrepreneurs. Like if you're like me, I was like this up and down thing where I've made a lot of money and then invested in my next startup, which like didn't really take off or didn't have an exit, and then suddenly funding got delayed, so didn't pay myself for a long time. So basically, like had nothing, and then made a lot of money again. Like it's I don't know. And through this, I've always sort of been the same person. I don't know. I don't really feel like I've ever, even when technically, I guess I've been in poverty. I've never felt in poverty. You know what I mean? Um, and I think it's because I'm not, because I'm very wealthy in so many other ways. So the reason for me to be an entrepreneur is all about mission and purpose. Like I can't not do it. It's just who I am, right? And so you've got a lot of people who are really good individual contributors of different things, and they have people like me. So I'm kind of odd. I'm really good at a lot of different things. Um, that I've learned and can do in my business, whether it's creating some sort of really fancy schmancy algorithm or Excel spreadsheet for a financial model or a marketing plan or coming on a podcast or public speaking, doing stand-up comedy. I don't know. There's lots of things I can do. Okay. But the thing that I'm best at is being like a conductor. So you think of an orchestra and you think of all the different people and all the different instruments and whatnot, and they need to be coordinated.
Right.
That every one of those individual contributors knows their part and they're perfect at it. But together, uh, I'm the sort of visionary connect the dots person that uh, is able, in fact, a Guatemalan shaman told me I was a binder. And what he meant by a binder, I was thinking like a 3-ring binder. What are you talking about? Anyway, he said, no, like
Like,
a binder, like you bind people together, you bind
yeah.
concepts together, you can see things that other people don't, and then
Mm-hmm.
but you're able to operationalize that, right? So
I love that.
that's my thing. And I go from more than classical music. To me, it's more like jazz, right? Because I like improvisation, I like collaboration, I like unexpected things and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a certain point, I mean, you can tell I didn't have this self-awareness in my first business where it was just like, how hard could this be? I'm just going to fly the plane as I build it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to do it. You know what I mean? I was like kind of clueless in a way, which in a way was an advantage until it wasn't. Now, at my age now, with all the experience, I just feel kind of calmer because I'm taking on a big thing, but I just feel pretty, I don't know, pretty calm about it. Like we're just going to go at our own pace. We're going to do some good things. We're going to always um, uh, walk and talk our values, right? And it's about who we're being as much as we're doing, and just go completely create a whole new decentralized way to consume and monetize content. So there you go.
So what I'm hearing is essentially you've got it's a balance between, so you talked about muscle memory. You've been here before. So you kind of know that
yeah, I know all the things that can happen.
You know what can happen, right? You've done the ebbs and flows have been ebbing and flowing. But at the same time, you have values, you have a purpose, you know exactly what you want. You know what you want to accomplish, right? And what the world needs.
I know the type of people that I like to work with and why specifically. And how to know that. Because at the end of the day, entrepreneurship's about the team. It's about the team executing. It's about having the right people, and the right people are different in different companies, right? But I think that's important, and not just from a day-to-day enjoyment standpoint, but people that you really can trust, people who are operating in integrity, people who actually, like, I value this thing. I know that a lot of people in society don't seem to care about this, but I do. Like, I really care about truth. I really don't like
with AI right now
lie.
and where it's going. That is like, we need you, right? Because we don't know the trust that people are putting in AI right now, if it's not truthful. And one thing you said stuck with me is right now it's focusing on the past and past data. What happens when they start to train it on what to think about the future, right? How messed up would it be?
Who's training it? Because right now there's no transparency around any of it, right?
Exactly.
And so you don't really know. And I mean, the other issue really that's going to become a problem is what's known as model collapse. And this is where, as more and more and more of the entire World Wide Web and every app and whatnot and social platform is made of AI content, the AI will be training on AI. This causes model collapse. It causes it just doesn't work. And and then there's some other reasoning models that just break down on complex tasks, that they just stop thinking. Like there's a lot of, I mean, it's interesting right now because there's a lot of hype, and there's some really exciting stuff. And there's also a lot of hype that's kind of like, it's not really doing what you think it's doing. And one of the things that I really worry about is, given what's happened, what I perceive as just the toxicity of social media. Like, look, I was one of the biggest cheerleaders and fans of social media. I was one of the first 100 people using Twitter, right? I believed at the time that social media was going to change the world for the better. And I was a really big part of that, doing all these crowdsourcing apps and social, all that stuff. But I also saw really early on that the recommendation engines and the fact that all the behavioral scientists had worked out, employed by those platforms, had worked out that the posts that got the most engagement and hence were the most profitable were the ones that engaged people's basest instincts, like made people angry, made people hostile, made people hate each other and all that stuff. Those platforms all profit from that. And the AI has all been trained on that. And the AI adds a whole other level. People are living in completely, there's Earth 1, Earth 2, Earth 3. People can't agree on basic facts. People, after a while, you don't know. If you don't know that, it's really difficult to have a civil society that's even somewhat enlightened, because people just don't get along. It becomes nihilistic, and it's very difficult to do business in a circumstance like that. So this is one of the reasons why I'm actually very concerned for our democracy in the United States and these sorts of things, because without information that we can all agree on and trust, or some sort of social contract, or just some general respect for each other and our humanity from a place of love, it's very difficult to see how all of that works. So that's actually my biggest kind of, I know it's all kind of external to me, but so this is something that drives me in the context of Podopolo, is how can I do that? I mean, because going way back, a previous company of mine, Newsit, way back in 2011, we had algorithms that were actually, because I saw this problem kind of early actually, that actually rated the not only the relevance but the reliability of user generated content, like with using probabilistic models and such to figure out, well, how likely, you know, is this content accurate, right? From a crowdsourced, but it was very, very complicated, but quite effective. And that company, I could not raise money for that company to save my life. It was really expensive to do. It was pre-AI, so it was going to need a lot of money for like essentially training what was the early beginnings of AI. It was natural language processing, unsupervised machine learning, all these things. And it was really cool. I mean, we had about 500,000 users using it, like creating content. Like we had innovated the mobile UI. It was launched pre-Instagram. It was photo sharing and video sharing. I mean, like it was really like innovated way ahead of its time. But a lot of that thinking really will start to inform what we're doing with Podopolo, because I think if content platforms, independent media, new types of social platforms, podcasting, all these different things can come at this with an approach that's much more about really not only empowering people, but also really enlightening them and giving them much more agency and ability to evaluate what they're consuming. Like if I can just contribute to that in any way, I'll be happy. And I think that's really my mission. Like my life, just in between all the tech stuff and the journalism and everything that I've done, has all pointed me to this place at this time, right? So I feel pretty aligned, you know?
And so a couple of questions come to mind, right? So we're fighting against people's base, like you said, they're going after people's like most primal instincts, right? What makes them scared?
Getting
what
people
makes
in the
them,
amygdala.
you know?
Reactive, the crocodile brain,
Right,
the amygdala,
exactly.
rather than being in the neocortex, right, of your brain, right, which is
Right.
more about rationality.
Exactly. And at the same time, we do have promising decentralized systems that will help bring this forward, right? And I'm guessing the hope that you have is kind of a cross section between how do we tackle, or the right word's not tackle, but how do we, help with, some sort of feeling that will go toe to toe with people's primal instincts at the end of the day, and then how do we leverage what's new, not what's new, but what is decentralized, where you can have ownership and make people care about that, and so I'm guessing there's hope in those two sides.
There's so much educate. I mean, it's really interesting. I was reading the other day that 60% of people in the US read at only a third grade level. And I
Scary.
mean, wow, that's
Wow.
scary because how do you, so education, is so important, and figuring out a way for anyone that creates content, figuring out ways to be able to explain complex things in simple ways, but ways that engage people's curiosity, and something you were talking before, like engage them and make them interested and in, because once you are a critical thinker, you enjoy critical thinking. Do you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But if you've
Yep.
never really learned those skills, you don't even know what you don't know.
Right.
And so I mean, I'd like to, and there are people who are doing this, but it's hard on a mass market scale when you have these, just big tech, right? Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of, alternatives. So when I think of how, I mean, Podopolo is so guerrilla in a way. Do you know what I mean? In the
Mm-hmm.
sense that we've architected, a business model that can serve all these big tech platforms, while at the same time, be really kind of independent. Like we're it's quite interesting. We have this model where our competitors are also our customers and vice versa. So
Oh,
it's quite interesting,
okay.
because we have such advanced AI that other folks that can benefit from our AI. So as our AI improves and it becomes really kind of very, because it's ethical, it's all this sort of stuff. Podcast ad network can license that from us just as easily as a podcast network can, or a podcast hosting company, for instance, right? right?
Okay.
Or our blockchain wallets that are interoperable. And like once those are available in the market, happy for any company to adopt those and use those.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not trying to be a destination in and of ourselves, and we're really working on highly decentralized distribution of content because we want all the podcasters on the Podopolo platform to be discovered not just on the Podopolo app,
Of course.
but like everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
We want them to grow audiences everywhere, and we want to empower that, right? So it's not like being like we have to own the. Yeah, I think women. I don't know. This is my thesis. I think women tend to think differently about this. We're a lot more collaborative. We're much more about partnerships and figuring out different ways to be more collaborative, and the word I like to use is cooperative, because like I'm actually a really competitive person, like but I'm competitive really against myself. I always want to be the best that I can be, right? And I do want to win and seize market, all those things that entrepreneurs want to do. But like there's a way, you don't have to be douchey about it. Like there's a
There's a way to do
to
that.
do it that
Exactly.
lifts other people up as well as yourself.
Yes.
And I think, I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why women return 60 cents more on every dollar invested, is because we're more likely to think like that.
Yeah. And then you get in a room and you actually say, how can I help you? Which you'll never get in a room with, 100 people, and you could, but women tend to do that more. Like, how can I help you?
Yeah.
And that question alone just creates more opportunity,
Completely.
Yeah. So, Melinda, I'm going to move to rapid fire questions really quickly as we wrap up.
Okay.
So, let's get started. So, this is a controversial one. Okay, I'm going to go fast, but so,
all right. Okay.
What is the biggest lie about AI today?
That it's human.
Oof.
Or that AGI is super close.
Ooh. One limitation you choose over unlimited resources.
Oh, one limitation. I'm an abundance-minded person, so I like unlimited. Like, I'm literally a venture partner of a VC firm called Zero Limits Capital.
There we go.
so I'm not sure I'm
just going to go with unlimited resources. Yes, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, why not? I mean, just, yeah.
How do you protect
I'm always trying to... Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just saying I'm always trying to expand resources, not contract them. Yeah.
Very nice. How do you protect your best thinking hours?
Oh, man. Okay, this is really important. A couple things. Really like going to sleep, like screens off at least an hour before I go to sleep, really focusing on having quality sleep. But when I wake up in the morning, not immediately looking at my phone, all that kind of stuff, but really having some quiet meditation time. Even if I only have 30 seconds available to me, having that just to center myself and the day and experience gratitude, right? For just being alive, for the sunshine, for the rain, like whatever, right? My kids, my dog, my partner, my company, just all the things, right? Just really that. And then getting out and moving. And one of the first things, just because I have this English cream golden retriever that's got to go out in the morning. Our morning walks are sacrosanct, and I find myself having my best thinking when I'm just out walking with the dog. Dogs are always in the present moment, and Augie kind of reminds me and keeps me there in that present moment. And then my ideal time for working for deep thought is in the morning, and I try not to have any calls in the morning. I try to make my first call like not until like 11. That can't always be possible, but especially seeing as I'm Pacific time, so it's hard for the East Coast and stuff. But I find I operate best when I can stick to that kind of schedule, and just ring fencing that's the other thing. I'm a calendar ninja. Like really ring fence my calendar.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll say, okay, this is where I'm at right now. So here's what my calendar is going to be like. I'm going to defend it but I do it quarterly because things change. And what's
Okay.
working in one quarter might be completely different in the next, especially as you grow a business. And as a CEO, the things that you're doing in the early stages of a business are very different in the growth stage, where it's a lot more about systems and hiring and making sure you're onboarding, making sure your employees know what they're doing. All right, like your role keeps changing as you grow a business. Like there's a very big difference between like no revenue, some revenue, five figures, six-figure revenue. Between 1 million and 3 million is a totally different ball game. Between 3 million and 10 million is you're in a totally different, not totally different person, but like you're doing different things. You have to rely on totally different muscles, right? So just being very thoughtful about all of that. And, at the end of the day, just making sure that you respect your own time, your own health, that you ring fence time for exercise, for meditation, for being with friends, that kind of stuff. Like you've got to find balance somewhere. And what I mean by balance, though, is it's not like every day has to be the same balance. There are some days that I have that are just work, 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 work. And there are other days that are like, I'm not doing any work today, like at all, nothing. Like today is a no, right?
Okay.
So, but it balances out, over time. Again, it comes back to conscious awareness, just being aware of what works for you and understanding what works for you, understanding what makes you feel happy and observing yourself. Journal, right? Like take note because you can forget. So sometimes it's good to just journal your feelings and how are you feeling about, right? Because stuff will come up,
I
that you can
so
deal
want to
with.
get into that. One day, that's like been on my bucket list. I don't know why, just journaling. But I think it'd be so important
It's
because I
good.
do forget a lot of things all the time. And, life is
Yeah.
sometimes,
It,
it's
it,
like you have to remember what happened so that you can enrich.
well, there's a really good process called the artist's way that I did years ago. And it really, like you write basically free form writing. You don't even think about what you're writing. You wake up in the morning and you write 3 large kind of foolscap pages. And then that's it. You don't even read it. Like you don't have to. And you just do that every day for like 6 months or whatever. And it's amazing, like, because you start to discover things about yourself because
Oh.
you're writing from a sort of unconscious, almost like semi-conscious kind of, and you've just woken up. So you're not even thinking. You're just, and it's really interesting, actually. Yeah, that was good. So try that. The artist's way. Yeah.
Artist's way. Okay, I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so to end now, one of the things that I want to do, I do want to do it, and I have to find it. Okay, so before we end, please tell us how we can connect with you
Oh,
after this.
okay, great. Well, okay, so I probably check of all the social platforms, I probably check LinkedIn the most. So it's just my name and you can find me there very easily and connect with me and send me a message or whatever. Check out the Podopolo website too if you want to know more about Podopolo and where we're going. So it's just Podopolo, PODOPOLO.com. I'm on Instagram, but I don't really like post and threads, but I don't really post that much
Mm,
there. But you can DM me. I haven't. I will be a lot more active on those platforms next year when Podopolo's whole machinery, we close our funding round, our whole machinery gets going on all that kind of thing. But I
yeah,
don't do a lot of social. But yeah, that's the LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me, like and connect, like genuinely connect with me.
that's awesome. So, for our audience, whether you're building in the Bahamas like me or anywhere in the world with big dreams and limited resources, just remember that the next disruption might come from someone who had to figure it out with less. And Melinda, I want to end every episode with an affirmation because I think it's important
Okay.
the words that you speak become your truth. And so one of the things that I would love to do, and I don't do it enough. So this is really like practice about speaking things into existence. So this is the affirmation of the episode. So taking a deep breath in, I transfer every limitation into a competitive advantage. I integrate all parts of myself into my success strategy. I use available tools to amplify my unique perspective. and to do good. I am unstoppable because I am authentic and I am resourceful. That's our affirmation of the episode.
Oh, just, the neck on the back of the hairs on the back of my neck were just, that's beautiful. What a beautiful affirmation. I love that. And I love that you end your episodes with an affirmation. I think that's just so
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
super
yeah.
important. I think we forget. I know that we can get caught up in like the negative and talking, and we don't realize that we're talking to ourselves in a certain way. So I think it's definitely important when we talk about dope living. Dope living is about, what we say, and a part of what we say is like our lifestyle. And so we have to
Mhm.
make it a part of our lifestyle to speak energy into ourselves, goodness and happiness, So thank you so much,
Well, this is
Melinda. This has been
delightful.
great.
Thank you, Janay. I really enjoyed our conversation. There's so much to talk about.
So much to
So, but
unpack.
anyway,
This has been so insightful. And it gives us so much to think about. And especially for our audience who may not be so integrated in AI and tech. This is really, I think you have broken it down in ways that will help all of us. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Just everybody out there, if you're intimidated by AI, just go play around with some different tools. Just kind of, the only way you can learn these things too, from a tool perspective, is just by doing it. And don't be intimidated by it. It's just a bunch of tech bros,
Yeah,
right?
All right. Well, this has been the Dope Living podcast episode with Melinda Wittstock. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a good day. I haven't mastered the ending yet, but thank you so much, Melinda. That's another episode of Dope Living in the books. If this conversation sparks something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, screenshot it, tell someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow @Dope Living for daily inspiration. Whether you're building businesses, advancing your career, or simply designing a life that's more intentional, keep dreaming, keep doing, and keep creating success that makes people go, damn, that's dope. Until next time, dreamers and doers.